නිවසේ මෙවැනි මත් පිට රැඳෙන විස බීජ 99.9%ක්ම විනාශ කරන විම් ක්ලීනර්ස්.
Tonight, case by case, Sri Lanka kicks off home treatment for asymptomatic and mild symptom patients island-wide from today.
Every day, at least twice, a doctor will talk to them over the phone.
Survival of the fittest, as warnings are issued on the need for urgent measures for export survival.
We are pursuing a policy framework in which exports are going to play a significant role. It's a policy like export or perish.
The EDB says it is time to get into a new game.
We are not very innovative. We seem to want to just do what everybody else is doing. We are in a comfort zone.
Information leaks. The IGP ordered to probe how media outlets knew of vital Ishalini case details even before the courts. In the nick of time, the government's quick stimulus response gave exporters a lifeline, says the central bank.
Lending rates are on average at a single digit rate right now. This is for the first time in history. The private sector saved more than 200 billion in interest cost.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Monday the 9th of August 2021.
10 ඒ කියන්නේ ලයිෆ් බෝයි අවස්ථා 10කදී ලෙඩ රෝග 10කට හේතු වන වෛරස් ඇතුළු විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරනවා කියලා.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanaka. Now then, the Ministry of Health commenced an island-wide program today to treat COVID-19 patients who are asymptomatic or with mild symptoms at home. However, patients with severe health conditions as well as expectant mothers at or beyond 24 weeks will not be eligible for home care if they are infected with COVID-19.
For the first time ever since the COVID-19 pandemic broke out in March last year, health authorities had to face the tough question of which COVID patient deserves a bed at a dedicated treatment facility or at a hospital in the backdrop of surging daily infections. The authorities had to look at home care for patients who are either asymptomatic or showing mild symptoms. A pilot project in this regard was launched in the Kaluthara district in May, and today it went island-wide. The 24 hours hotline 1390 is set up by the Ministry of Health to keep tabs on home care COVID patients.
This is available for people from age 2 years to 65 years, those who have a positive PCR test or a positive rapid antigen test, and they are also asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, and there is no long-term comorbidities, and there should be an environment suitable to be cared at home at their premises. That is, if they have a separate room for the PCR positive person to be and enough sanitary facilities to be isolated from the rest of the family. And they also should have a continuous way of communicating with the center for continuing the care.
Home care, however, is not open for all persons who test positive for COVID-19. Instead, there are certain conditions which have to be taken into account in a patient assessment process.
How this system works is when a positive PCR or a positive rapid antigen test is detected, this information is transmitted to the area MOH and his team, and the area MOH and his team will do an initial assessment to see if the person is suitable to be at home and be cared for. In that event, that person will be cared at home for 14 days. During this home stay, every day at least twice a doctor will talk to them over the phone and their condition will be assessed, and if there are any deterioration or new symptoms being developed, they will be admitted to the hospital. So after 14 days they will be released from home care and isolation. Pregnant mothers who are 24 weeks and above are not eligible to be cared at home. So any pregnant mother who is COVID positive and less than 24 weeks of pregnancy and there's no other comorbidities, they can be cared at home.
Some factions in society, however, are alleging that the COVID home care program risks lives of people, saying that more deaths could occur at homes. But the Ministry of Health sees no grounds to harbour such fears.
නිවෙස්වල මරණය සිදුවෙන්න පුළුවන්කමක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද දැඩි අවදානන් සහිත කිසිම කෙනෙක් නිවෙස්වල අපි රැක බලා ගැනීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම තමයි යම්කිසි කෙනෙකුට රෝග ලක්ෂණ විශේෂයෙන්ම බරපතල රෝග ලක්ෂණ තිබේ නම් කොයිතරම් හොඳින් ගෙදර ඉන්න පුළුවන්කම තිබුණත් අපි රෝහල් ගත කිරීම මිසක් එතන තබා ගැනීමට අපි කොහෙත්ම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ඒ තත්ත්වය තුළ මේ ක්‍රියාවලිය හරහා ගෙවල් වල සිදුවන මරණ වැඩි වෙන්න ලැබෙන්න විදිහක් නැහැ. නමුත් මේක වැරදියට පාවිච්චි කරගනිමින් බරපතල අඩි අවදානං රෝගීන් විවිධ ක්‍රමවේද මගින් නිවසේම රැක බලා ගැනීමට උත්සාහ කළොත් මං හිතනවා නිවසේදී මරණ වීම යම් ප්‍රමාණයකට වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
අද සේවසකට වැඩි ජනතා විශ්වාසය නව සංයෝගයකින් රයිනෝ රූෆිං සහ සීලිං ෂීට්.
Now then, health experts urge the public to seek medical assistance once they show symptoms of COVID-19 without waiting too long. Further, they also request the people not to violate guidelines imposed on weddings and funerals, as they can lead to the creation of virus subclusters.
On the 29th of July, Sri Lanka recorded 2,370 new COVID infections. Fast forward 11 days to yesterday, the daily caseload has risen to almost 3,000. One of the chief contributing factors in the rapid rise in new infections has been the feared Delta variant, which is suspected to be the dominant variant in the Western province. As new infections rise, the healthcare system comes under stress. Several hospitals within the Western province and a few outside it have started to feel the strain. The Colombo South Teaching Hospital in Kalubovila and the Colombo North Teaching Hospital in Ragama started to run out of beds for COVID patients. Footage allegedly showing COVID patients lying on the floor without beds started to emerge. With that being the case, State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Channa Jayasumana, yesterday visited the Colombo South Teaching Hospital in Kalubovila to look into the situation there.
ඒක తాවකාලිකව ඇතිවෙච්ච තත්ත්වයක් පමණයි. මොකද අර PCR සහ rapid antigen පරීක්ෂණ කරලා වාට්ටු වෙත යවනකම් ඇතිවෙච්ච తాවකාලිකව ඇතිවෙච්ච තදබද තත්ත්වයක් පමණයි. නමුත් අද වෙනකොට ක්‍රමානුකූලව මේ සියල්ලම යථා තත්ත්වයට පත් කරලා තියෙනවා. දැනට රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණයක් සිටිනවා නිවෙස්වලදී ප්‍රතිකාර ලබන. ඒ වගේම තමයි කළුබෝවිල ශික්ෂණ රෝහල තුල අලුතෙන් වාට්ටු දෙකක් හඳුන්වලා දීලා තියෙනවා COVID-19 රෝගීන් සඳහා. ඒක නිසා මේ රෝගීන්ගේ තදබදයක් මේ වෙනකොට කළුබෝවිල ශික්ෂණ රෝහලේදී දැක ගන්න නැහැ. මృత ශරීරාගාරය බලන්න ආවා. එතන විශේෂඥ අධිකරණ වෛද්‍ය නිලධාරීතුමත් සමගත් අපි සාකච්ඡා කරා. මේ වෙනකොට මේ මృత ශරීරය එකතු වෙන තත්ත්වයක් කිසිසේත්ම කළුබෝවිල ශික්ෂණ රෝහලේ දක්නට ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ. මෙතන යම්කිසි ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙන්නේ ශීතාගාර 37කින් 20ක පමණම COVID-19 නොවන රෝගීන්ගේ පැරණි මృత ශරීර තියෙනවා හඳුනා නොගත්ත. ඒකට නීතිපති දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ උපදෙස් අරගෙන ඒවා අධහනය කරන්න එහෙම නැත්නම් භූමදාන කරන්න මේ සතියේදී කටයුතු කරගෙන යනවා.
Meanwhile, today the State Minister visited the Colombo North Teaching Hospital in Ragama. Speaking to media, Professor Channa Jayasumana said that the overcrowding that prevailed at the hospital is brought under control successfully by the hospital staff with the support of the local political authorities. In the meantime, with reports of dwindling COVID treatment facilities coming to the public domain, the Health Ministry today gave an update on the present state of COVID beds and PCR testing.
In 224 treatment centers, there are 33,962 beds available, out of which at this moment 32,762 beds are being occupied. At the moment, there are 89 ICU beds occupied for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. And as reported yesterday, there had been 18,704 PCR tests performed over the previous 24 hours.
Yesterday, there were 2,961 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed in the island. 852 of them were recorded from Colombo district, which is 28% of the total figure. This reaffirms that Colombo continues to be a COVID hotspot. Kaluthara meanwhile confirmed 320 new infections, while Gampa confirmed 319. Further 255 fresh cases were detected from Gaul, 187 from Ratnapura, 142 from Kandy, 135 from Kegol and 113 from Jaffna. The remaining 18 districts accounted for 633 new cases. Yesterday's caseload also included 5 imported cases. Though much of the blame for the recent rise in spread of the virus has been put down to the Delta variant, public behavior also isn't helping the situation. With certain restrictions relaxed, health authorities say that people are abusing the freedom given to organize certain events. What's more, they say that various small clusters have formed centering weddings, funerals and parties, leading to the conclusion that there were non-adherence to health guidelines at these events.
We are not going to close down the country because of the economic reasons. Most of the countries in the world also follow the same rule. But we have imposed certain restrictions, especially for people with comorbidities and pregnant mothers and the shift system in the public sector and the private sector. These are to reduce the number of people in one place. So even though we impose these laws, if people gather together at their localities, homes, the parties, the votes and everything, then the idea of these regulations will be completely lost.
In any case, if and when you are infected, health authorities say that it's imperative to seek medical assistance as early as possible.
If you have any symptom, you have to go to a doctor or a hospital as quickly as possible, because initial stage, if we treat people, they get better. But if you go at the last moment, when you are hypoxic, when your organs are failing, when your other ailments have gone uncontrolled, then it is very difficult to control your illness. Remember, this problem will go on for another couple of years. So we'll have to follow our regulations and rules meticulously during that period in order to completely get out of this pandemic situation.
With a confirmation of 1,928 new COVID infections today, the country's number of active cases jumped to 31,298. There were also 2,161 COVID recoveries as well, taking the overall tally to 295,518.
Health authorities, meanwhile, have expressed confidence that a total of 96% of people over the age of 30 will be vaccinated in full by the end of September. In the meantime, the government continues to call on members of the public aged over 60 years to get vaccinated without delay and have ordered that priority be given to them at vaccination centres over the next 3 days.
As the inoculation of anyone over 30 continues, the focus has shifted to over 60 age group due to the high number of fatalities among them. With that being the case, the government has now decided to speed up vaccinations of this age group in the next 3 days and has accordingly set up a new hotline 1906 for registrations. Meanwhile, over 200,000 vaccinations were carried out yesterday by health sector and military personnel.
Yesterday, there had been 23,135 persons vaccinated with the first dose of Covishield vaccine, and the total has gone up to 1,127,008. And the second dose of Covishield vaccine has been given to 1,021 persons yesterday, and the total has gone up to 861,744. Sinopharm first dose has been given to 69,041 persons yesterday, and the total has gone up to 8,794,593. Second dose of Sinopharm vaccine has been given to 153,678 persons, and the total has gone up to 2,061,775. Pfizer first dose has been given to 711 persons, and the total has gone up to 251,474, and the second dose of Pfizer vaccine has been given to 75 people, and the total has gone up to 533. Moderna first dose has been given to 995 persons yesterday, and the total has gone up to 748,936.
Meanwhile, the government says that about 96% of people above 30 years can be vaccinated with both doses by the first week of September.
මේ වෙන විට 30ට වැඩි අයගෙන් 96%කට අපි එන්නත් දීලා තියෙනවා. එහෙමනම් අපි ඊතුරු මාසෙ ඉවර වෙනකොට මේ 96%ටම දෙවෙනි එන්නත ලබා දීලා ඉවර වෙනවා. ඒ මොකද අපි මාසයක් ඇතුළත දෙවෙනි එන්නත ලබා දෙනවා. ඒතකොට ඒ කියන්නේ අගෝස්තු මාසේ අග එහෙම නැත්නම් සැප්තැම්බර් මුල සතිය වෙනකොට අපි 30ට වැඩි අයගෙන් 96%කට වඩා එන්නත් දෙකම දීලා ඉවරයි. නමුත් අපි එතනින් සම්පූර්ණයෙන් ඒක ඉවර කළා 30ට අඩු අය පටන් ගැනීමක් සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද එන එන්නත් වලින් යම්කිසි කොටසක් අපි අගෝස්තු මාසයේ අග සිට 30ට අඩු අයටත් ලබා දීම සඳහා කටයුතු කරනවා. එතකොට මේක එකක් පිට එකක් ගිහිල්ලා යන්නේ. එතකොට අපි ඒ අයට හිතන්න අගෝස්තු මාසයේ අග එන්නත් ලබා දෙන්න පටන් ගත්තොත් 30ට අඩු අයට සැප්තැම්බර් මාසයේ අග වෙනකොට 30ට අඩු අයගේ සම්පූර්ණ ප්‍රමාණය එතන මම හිතන්නේ ලොකු ප්‍රමාණයක් නැහැ. ඉන්නේ මිලියන 3.5ක පමණ ප්‍රමාණයක්. ඒ අයට ලබා දුන්නාන් පස්සේ සැප්තැම්බර් අග වෙනකොට ඒ අයගේ සම්පූර්ණයෙන් එන්නත් කරන්නේ අවසන් වෙනවා.
In the meantime, the people are continuing to be urged to go out and get a vaccine without fail.
Any vaccine, the coverage is about 95, maybe 90, maybe 97, 98. So there's about a 2%, 5% percentage of population who is vulnerable to get the severe disease. That is the reality. But if we highlight that small portion and discourage majority of people from getting the vaccine, we are heading for a disaster. So please, I ask everybody not to advocate against vaccines. Do not highlight here and there evidence of some breakthrough infection or deaths, even in patients who had vaccination. That is very bad advocacy, and we should not do that, because categorically saying whole world has been benefited by getting immunization by COVID-19 vaccine.
Meanwhile, health experts responded to talks of a third vaccine shot or annual vaccinations.
තුන්වෙනි එන්නතක අවශ්‍යතාවය මෙවැනි වෛරස් වල එදා ඉඳලම තිබුණා. තුන්වෙනි එකක් කියන්න බෑ. හතරවෙනි පස්වෙනි වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. මේ මුල් එන්නත ලබා ගැනීමෙන් පසු නොකඩවාම අවුරුද්දකට වතාවක් අපි කියනවා බූස්ටර් ඩෝස් කියලා. ඒ වගේ අමතර එන්නතක් ලබා දීමට සමහර විට අවශ්‍ය වෙන්න ඉඩ තියෙනවා. එහෙම අවශ්‍ය නොවන එන්නත් බිහිවන තෙක් හෝ ඒක කලීමට සිද්ධ වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් මේ සඳහා මේ මොහොත වෙනකොට අපිට අවශ්‍ය කරන දත්ත සහ අවශ්‍යතාවය තාම පැහැදිලිවම මෙයාවෙලත් නැහැ. ඒ වගේම අපිට කාලය ගත වෙලත් නැහැ. මොකද අපි තාම පළවෙනි මාත්‍රාව දීලා අවුරුද්දකට ගත වෙලා නැහැ. හැබැයි එවන කාල සීමාව තුළ මේක අවශ්‍ය වුණොත් කරගෙන යාමට අපිට ඒක ගැටලුවක් වන්නේත් නැහැ.
Now, despite a worsening pandemic situation and people warned against mass gatherings, the country's teachers and principals have continued to hit the streets over pay issues, risking COVID-19 infection. Following a short pause, teacher trade unions recommenced their protest campaign with marches that have been extended to the north. Criticising the protests today, Minister of Education Professor G.L. Piris said that it is the students and their future that are affected by the moves.
For the 28th day running, teacher trade unions continued with their trade union action and stayed away from classrooms while demanding that long-standing salary anomalies be rectified. The government response to the strike has been one of acceptance of their issues, but have also explained to the unions that an immediate solution may be difficult given the complicated pandemic-hit economic situation it finds itself in. Assurances have been offered that a solution will be delivered in November. However, the strikes continue, with unions rejecting it and demanding a quick-fire cabinet decision on the matter. The government rationale is that a surprise salary hike would have a significant impact on the larger economy, with state expenditure needing some careful management these days. In this backdrop, today's cabinet meeting is critical in that holds the hopes of not only the striking teachers and principals, but more importantly, the hundreds of thousands of students currently left languishing at home with the pressure of having to deal with catching up with their syllabuses.
අද දිනේ පවත්වන අමාත්‍ය මණ්ඩලයේදී මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් විශේෂ සාකච්ඡාවක් පවත්වන බව අපිට දැනුම් දීලා තියෙනවා. අපි අපේක්ෂා කරනවා අද දිනේදී මේ සඳහා පිළිතුරු ලබා ගැනීම. එහෙම නොවුනොත් අපේ ක්‍රියාමාර්ග අනිවාර්යෙන් ඉස්සරහට යනවා.
අපි කියන්නේ අනෙකුත් රජයේ සේවකයන්ට ගෙවපු වැටුපෙන් 60% ප්‍රමාණයක් අපිට අඩුයි. ඒ 60% ප්‍රමාණය අපි ගෙවන්න කියලාත් නෙමෙයි කියන්නේ ගෙවන ආකාරය සඳහා අපි සමග එකඟතාවයකට ලැබෙන්න කියන එකයි අපි කියන්නේ.
In the meantime, the protests which were confined to the south of the country have extended to the northern province as well, with a protest march by teachers and principals unions in the Vadamarachi education zone, beginning from Point Pedro to an ending in a gathering at the Point Pedro bus stand.
தேசிய ரீதியாக ஒரு மாத காலமாக இனமத பேதமின்றி இந்த அதிபர் ஆசிரியர் சம்பள முரண்பாட்டை தீர்க்கும் முகமாக போராட்டம் நடைபெற்று கொண்டிருக்கின்றது. அந்த வகையிலே நாங்களும் 30 தொழிற்சங்கங்களுடன் இணைந்து இந்த அதிபர் ஆசிரியர் சம்பள முரண்பாட்டை தீர்க்கும் முகமாகவும் இந்த போராட்டத்தை முன்னெடுத்து செல்கின்றோம்.
What's more, teachers and principals in the Jaffna district assembled near the Veerasingham Hall in Jaffna town today and made their way towards the Jaffna district secretariat in a convoy of motorcycles. However, the motorcade was obstructed by the police.
අපිට ඔයගොල්ලෝ නවත්තන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. මේ කොරෝනා නිසා ගොඩක් මිනිස්සු මැරලා තියෙනවා. හරිද? තව බෝ වෙනවා. දැන් මේ තියෙන රටේ තියෙන සත්‍ය ඔයගොල්ලන්ට දැනගෙන මේ කැන්ඩි වල ඉඳලා එන එකට නතර කරා. මේ මොලේ නැති නිසා තමයි අපි දැන් පැහැදිලි කරන්න යන්නේ කවුද? සර් මට දන්නවා සර්. ඔව්. ඉතින් මේ කියන්නේ මේ මාත්‍යද. අපි මේ තරහට නෙමෙයි ආවේ. සල්ලි තමයි කිව්වා.
However, despite police obstructions, the protest continued. Meanwhile, teacher trade unions visited the United Nations office in Colombo today and handed over an official letter.
Give us an appointment to discuss this lengthily and inform especially UNICEF and Union Nations.
Okay, thank you, sir. This is noted. Yeah. And I'll deliver this note to their resident coordinator for the United Nations.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, more protests were staged across the country despite warnings over the dangers and the risks posed by the pandemic situation in the country. The Inter-University Students Federation and the Students' Movement for Free Education demonstrated in front of the Sri Jayawardhanapura University this afternoon. Their demands include the withdrawal of the Kothalawala Defence University Act, the release of arrested student activists, including the convener of the Inter-University Students Federation, Wasantha Mudalige, and a solution to their salary issues.
මේට වඩා බලය තිබ්බාණ්ඩු ගෙනාපු පනත් පවා අපි අහෝසි කරා වට වඩා මර්ධනකෙද්දී කොච්චර මර්ධන ගෙනාවත් කොච්චර තර්ජනයන් ගෙනාවත් මේ අරගලේ නවතින්නේ කොතලාවල පෞද්ගලික විශ්වවිද්‍යාල පනත අහෝසි කරලා. ඒ වගේම දැනට අත්අඩංගුවට අරන් ඉන්න ශිෂ්‍ය නායකයෝ කම්කරු නායකයෝ වහාම නිදහස් කළ යුතුයි.
In the meantime, the Inter-University Students Federation also launched a protest in Kandy. In the meantime, speaking to media, Minister of Education Professor G.L. Pieris expressed his displeasure over the trade union action in light of the pandemic situation.
සෙප්තැම්බර් මාසයේ පළවන සතියේ පියවරෙන් පියවර පාසල් විවෘත කිරීම තමයි රජයේ අභිලාෂය වෙලා තිබුණේ. හැබැයි දැන් තියෙන සෞඛ්‍ය තත්ත්වය අනුව ඒක අගෝස්තු අවසානයේ සෙප්තැම්බර් මුල් සතියේ කරන්න පුළුවන් වේද කියන එක අවිනිශ්චිතයි. ඉතින් එවන් තත්ත්වයක් තුල මාර්ගගත අධ්‍යාපනය ඉතාමත් වැදගත් වෙනවා. ඒතකොට දැන් මාර්ගගත අධ්‍යාපනයනොත් වෙන් වෙනවා කියලා ගුරුවරුන් කියනවා. කාගෙන්ද පරිගන්නේ? 2020 සාමාන්‍ය පෙළ විභාගයේ ප්‍රතිඵල නිකුත් කිරීමට COVID-19 තත්ත්වය නිසා ඒ ප්‍රායෝගික පරීක්ෂණ පවත්වන්නට බැරි වුණා. හැබැයි දැන් මේ වෘත්තීය සමිතිය කියලා තියෙනවා ඒකෙනොත් අයින් වෙනවා කියලා. ඒකේ ප්‍රතිඵලය වන්නේ 6,22,000ක ප්‍රතිඵල නිකුත් කිරීමට බැරි වෙනවා. කාගෙන්ද මේ පලියන්නේ?
We will see you once more on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Dr. Chandranath Amarasekar of the Central Bank's Economic Research Department says that Sri Lanka's exporters were given a valuable lifeline through the many-layered fiscal and monetary stimuli since the beginning of the pandemic. Dr. Amarasekar revealed that maintaining a single-digit interest rate regime injected almost 200 billion rupees into the private sector through interest cost alone, giving them some critical breathing space.
Director of Economic Research at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Chandranath Amarasekara says that maintaining historically low single-digit interest rates helped inject almost 200 billion rupees into the market, in addition to government tax concessions and relief loans that aided the country's export sector in weathering the pandemic.
We have seen in the recent past, I would say post-pandemic, is that from the central bank's side, we have reduced policy interest rates and injected a large amount of liquidity so that overall interest rate structure and credit availability in the country improves drastically, enabling the industries, including exporters, to benefit. So if I give you an example, almost all market bank lending rates are on average at a single digit rate right now. And this for the first time in history. So this has enabled the private sector to save more than 200 billion in terms of interest cost. And we know that this is in addition to all the support that is being given to SMEs, in particular through concessionary loan schemes by the central bank as well as the government. From the government side also, we know how the tax cuts introduced from the end of 2019 are helping the overall economy as well as the export sector to survive during the pandemic and also to perform better. So we hope that this monetary and fiscal stimulus that is in place will help the export sector in particular to perform better in the period ahead.
Dr. Amarasekara explained that the aim of the government and the central bank will continue to remain on how to reduce Sri Lanka's trade deficit, which he hopes current fiscal and monetary stimuli will achieve.
If I get back to some numbers, if I compare the export performance, say in 2000, during the year 2000, with what we saw at the peak in 2018-19, we have seen a growth in exports in Sri Lanka by about 200%. But the issue that we've had is that during the same period, imports have also grown by about 300%. And obviously, with imports growing at a higher pace, the trade deficit has widened drastically. So this is what I think the government wants to reverse, and this is what the central bank also wants to see improving. That's what we expect through the provision of monetary stimulus as well as fiscal stimulus, and also all the other support that the exporters are getting at the moment.
Moving on with other local stories, the court heard today that an individual reportedly clad in a police uniform who pressurized Shalini's mother and brother not to take her death to the police and to drop the matter then and there is in fact a chief inspector at the police headquarters. It was revealed the officer in question had served in MP Rishad Badiuddin's security detail when he was a minister. When the case was taken up today, the court also ordered a probe into how facts unearthed during investigations were being leaked on social media, even before they were submitted in court. 16-year-old Shalini, who was employed at MP Rishad Badiuddin's residence, died on the 15th of July at the Colombo National Hospital after she was admitted with burns suffered at the parliamentarian's house. The post-mortem examination identified the cause of death as shock induced by an infection of the wounds suffered as a result of the burns. However, a second post-mortem was conducted after Shalini's remains were exhumed on the 30th of July by a special 3-member committee comprising of senior judicial medical officers. 4 persons were arrested in the aftermath of her death. MP Badiuddin's wife, father-in-law, brother-in-law and the middleman who supplied Shalini to the Badiuddin household were taken into custody and remanded until today. When the case was taken up before the Colombo Magistrates Court today, Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Papiris, appearing on behalf of the police, told the court that Shalini has been put at a great disadvantage since facts unearthed during investigations are published in social media even before they are reported to court. The Colombo Additional Magistrate Rajendra Jayasuriya then ordered the IGP to investigate as to how these facts are being leaked to social media and produce a report to court. The Deputy Solicitor General added that a suspicion still remains whether Shalini's death is a suicide, an accident or a murder. He went on to say that when Shalini was hospitalized, a sub-inspector at the Borella police identified as Sriyaratna had approached her and had asked as to what happened, and Shalini had been in severe discomfort at the time. Further, the sub-inspector had videoed the interaction. When pursuing the footage, Deputy Solicitor General said that Shalini responded with great difficulty, saying things such as, "Don't hit, remove the phone." Earlier, the police had reported to court that an individual clad in attire similar to that of a police uniform had exerted influence on Shalini's mother and her brother when they visited the Badiuddin residence following Shalini's death. The individual had told the duo not to take the matter to the police and to end it then and there. Deputy Solicitor General Dilip Papiris told the court today that an investigation was launched into this individual in question and he is identified as Chief Inspector Lafar, attached to the police headquarters. He made evident that this Chief Inspector of Police had been in the security detail of MP Badiuddin when he was a minister. The Deputy Solicitor General noted that although Shalini, engulfed in flames, had made it to the door of the kitchen from her room and had run a considerable distance through the corridor to the living room, it is quite amazing that the goods nearby had not sustained any fire damage. He also cast suspicion whether the suspects had destroyed any evidence of the crime scene, since no external evidence of a fire was found at the crime scene. He went on to say that it is a doctor named Randika who had made a note saying that Ishalini set herself on fire upon her hospitalization. While noting that the relevant doctor is presently overseas, he said that the investigators are focused on obtaining a statement from him via Zoom. He also made evident that none of the doctors had made a note saying Ishalini was of sound mind at the time of her hospitalization. The Deputy Solicitor General added that when the police recorded a statement from MP Badiuddin on Saturday, he had denied knowing much about Ishalini. The legal counsels representing the defendants meanwhile noted that the court has the power to grant their clients bail over the accusations levelled against them and thus sought bail for their clients. Colombo Additional Magistrate Rajendra Jayasuriya, however, refused bail for the suspects and instead ordered their remand until the 23rd of August. Now then, the Governor of the Central Bank, W.D. Lakshman, or Professor W.D. Lakshman, I should say, that the current global economic crisis remains as bad as the 2007-2008 financial crisis, and that Sri Lanka's export sector may need to be propped up with the right type of policy, which he says is best described as export or perish.
We are pursuing a policy framework in which exports are going to play a significant role. It's a policy like export or perish situation. The crisis seems to be worse than the 2008 global financial crisis. Outlook for our exports seems uncertain and requires a significant intervention on the policy side front to get us out of this uncertainty and go for a significant growth process in the export.
Also speaking at the virtual discussion, Export Development Board Chairman Suresh Demel, however, says that Sri Lanka's future doesn't lie in doing what everyone else does. Instead, stepping away from selling commodities and selling stories is what will set us apart and take away the stress of having to compete in a saturated market.
I'm also talking about the premium niche markets. I believe truly that those markets are much easier to cater to than catering to the highly competitive commodity kind of market. So packaging, telling a story, and innovation. You have to put something different out there. I think another problem with Sri Lanka is that we are not very innovative. We seem to want to just do what everybody else is doing. We are in a comfort zone and also be entrepreneurial. That's what an entrepreneur is supposed to do.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.